Black Belt asked a shy little girl to fight as a joke, but what she did next left him on the floor. When a confident black belt instructor at the local dojo noticed a shy little girl quietly practicing in the corner, he saw an easy target for a joke, a quick laugh to entertain the crowd. What started as a careless challenge to humiliate her soon became a moment no one there would ever forget. Because beneath her quiet demeanor and small frame was a legacy forged in silence, discipline, and untold sacrifice. In just moments, this underestimated girl would reveal a strength far beyond what anyone expected, a power born not of arrogance or noise, but of years of hidden training and unwavering resilience. And the instructor was about to learn why judging someone by their size or shyness can lead to the most humbling of lessons. This is the story of how a single moment shattered assumptions, reclaimed honor, and reminded everyone what true strength really means. And before I forget, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to our channel so you don't miss tomorrow's special video. I guarantee you won't want to miss it. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the gym like a low, constant whisper. It was Saturday morning at Lions Martial Arts Academy, and the mats were crowded. Parents lined the benches, clutching water bottles and phones. The air smelled of rubber soles and tiger balm. At the far end of the mat, behind a rack of worn gloves and shin guards, sat a small girl no older than 10. She didn't speak, didn't shift in her seat, just watched. Her name was Alara, small for her age, with brown hair in a loose braid and eyes that seemed to take in everything, not with fear, but with something older, something still. She wore no uniform, only a simple gray hoodie and leggings. Her shoes were clean, her hands folded neatly in her lap. No one noticed her. Not yet. Coach Darren, the gym's owner and a two-time national competitor, was busy teaching a group of white belts when Jake Mercer walked in. Jake, 26, cocky, and loud, was a local legend in the gym. Black belt since he was 18. A monster on the mats. And he knew it. He slapped hands with Coach Darren, dropped his bag beside the ring, and scanned the room for someone worth his time. And then he saw her. "Hey," Jake called out, his voice rising above the chatter. "Who brought their little sister to class?" A few heads turned. Parents smiled awkwardly. One of the boys snorted. Coach Darren shot him a look, but said nothing. He knew Jake. Knew he needed to burn out his ego before he could listen. Jake sauntered over. Towered over Alara. "You training, kid? Or just here for the free Wi-Fi?" Alara looked up, blinked once, then looked away. Jake grinned at the silence, mistaking it for shyness. "Tell you what," he said, clapping his hands. "I'll make it interesting. One light round. Me and her. I'll go easy." A murmur rippled through the gym. Coach Darren hesitated. "Jake, it's a joke, coach. Come on. It'll be fun." And that word, joke, echoed. Alara stood. Not fast, not defiant, just quiet and deliberate. She stepped onto the mat without saying a word. No warm-up, no gloves, just barefoot steps and absolute calm. Jake raised an eyebrow. "All right, princess, let's see what you got." From the corner, an older man in uniform, quiet, unnoticed until now, looked up from the bleachers. He wasn't clapping, wasn't smiling. He just watched her, like someone seeing a ghost. In his hand, half obscured by a folded jacket, was an old Navy SEAL trident patch. And next to it, a photo, worn, faded, of a woman in full combat gear, with a child on her shoulders, smiling, braid in the wind. The same eyes, the same stillness. The man didn't say a word. He just folded the photo back into his jacket pocket and waited. Jake Mercer stretched his neck with a theatrical roll, tapping his fists against his hips like he was loosening up for a real fight. The parents chuckled nervously. The kids watched with wide eyes. But Alara? She didn't even blink. She stood on the center mat, bare feet pressed into the foam like they belonged there. Her arms hung loosely at her sides. Chin lowered. Eyes focused somewhere just past Jake's chest. Not scared, not eager. Just ready. Coach Darren raised a hand. 1 minute. Light contact only. Respect the mat. Always do, coach, Jake said with a smirk. He didn't bow. Alara did. The timer beeped. Jake stepped in fast, tossing out a lazy jab, just enough to test distance. She didn't move. Another jab, faster this time. Still no reaction. Jake grinned wider. Come on, kid. Blink at least. He threw a playful front kick aimed a foot short of her knee, but she stepped around it so precisely, so cleanly, it looked choreographed. Then she was behind him. He spun. No smirk this time. Coach Darren's brow furrowed. Jake threw a real jab now. Sharp, clean, just enough to sting. But Alara parried it. Not with force. With angle. Like she'd done it 1,000 times. The room quieted. Some of the parents leaned forward. Jake advanced again, a low roundhouse for her leg. But she shifted her weight, let it pass, and tapped his exposed calf with the side of her foot. Not hard. Just enough to say, I could have swept you. Jake's pride prickled. You've been watching YouTube, huh? He said, voice tight. He feinted, then shot in fast, too fast for a kid to read. Hands up, a flash of black belt speed. But Alara dropped her weight, rotated, and locked his wrist mid-strike. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't brute strength. It was perfect form. Jake froze. One more ounce of pressure, and his elbow would have popped. Alara released him. Calm. No flare. Just backed away, hands open again. The timer beeped. Silence. Coach Darren didn't call anything. He just stared. Jake backed up, face red, trying to laugh it off. Lucky grab. But the gym wasn't laughing. Someone from the bleachers whispered, She doesn't flinch. At the far end, the old man, still silent, still watching, slowly placed the folded seal patch beside him on the bench. Next to it, a set of miniature dog tags on a chain. They didn't belong to him. They were too small, too light. Coach Darren crossed the mat and crouched beside Alara. He didn't speak right away. Where did you learn that wrist control? He asked gently. Alara glanced past him, to the man in the bleachers, then down at the mat. Home, she said. It was the first word she'd spoken since arriving, and it weighed more than anything Jake had thrown all morning. The gym emptied slowly after class, but the quiet buzz lingered like aftershock. Parents whispered near the door. Kids glanced back at the mat as they slipped on sneakers. Some asked Coach Darren if Alara would be back. He didn't answer right away. Jake Mercer sat on the edge of the ring, jaw tight, his black belt coiled beside him like a reminder. He didn't speak, didn't move. He just stared at his hands like they'd betrayed him. Alara had already changed back into her hoodie. She sat cross-legged near the water fountain, staring at the scuffed floor tiles. Her expression hadn't changed since the match. Calm, unreadable. But the man on the bench was watching her again. He wore a plain military jacket, old and sun-faded, sleeves pushed to the elbows. His hands were weathered, not from age, but from decades of calluses. On his right wrist, a faint scar curved like a half-moon, and on his forearm, barely visible beneath the cuff, was a faded tattoo of coordinates. Not a unit insignia, a location. He stood slowly, picked up the trident patch and the tiny dog tags, and walked to the front desk. Coach Darren looked up. You her grandfather? The man shook his head once. No, sir. Uncle? Guardian? Still nothing. He looked back at Alara, then placed the folded patch on the desk. Her mother was Valkyrie 6. Darren blinked. The name hit like static in the air. The rescue operative? From Bagram. The man gave a single nod. That Valkyrie? I buried her. Silence. Outside the window, a truck passed, spraying rain from the pavement. Inside, the air felt heavy. She left the girl with me. The man continued. Said not to train her. Said to give her a normal life. Coach Darren swallowed. And you didn't? I did. For 8 years. His eyes never left Alara. But she remembered things I never taught her. Coach lowered his voice. That control, her angles. She wasn't guessing. She wasn't. Alara stood up, as if she sensed they were talking about her. Her braid had loosened, strands of hair clinging to her cheek. She didn't walk over, just stood there, hands in her hoodie pocket, waiting. Jake finally stood too, his pride still caught between confusion and bruised ego. She's not normal. The man looked at him, not unkindly, but with weight. No, he said. She isn't. Jake frowned. What was that move? That lock. The man glanced at Alara. Modified C-clamp. Valkyrie taught it to NATO rescue medics in '09. She was 8 months pregnant when she demoed it. Jake looked away. Coach Darren turned toward Alara, voice soft now. Does she want to train here? The old man didn't answer. Instead, Alara took a single step forward. I want to finish what she started, she said quietly. But not for revenge. Darren nodded slowly. Then we'll train you, he said. Properly. She didn't smile, but her eyes flicked toward the trident patch on the counter. She reached out, not to take it, just to straighten it, then turned back toward the mat. The gym was empty now. The mats had been cleaned. The chatter had faded, but a different kind of training had begun. Coach Darren stood at the edge, arms crossed, as Alara moved through footwork drills alone, deliberate, methodical. No music, no noise, just the soft tap-thump of bare feet on foam and the rustle of her sleeves with each pivot. He wasn't giving her compliments. She didn't need them. From the office window above the floor, the old man watched. His name wasn't known to most, just Mr. Hale on the emergency contact form. But those who had served knew the name in whispers. He had once been a breacher, recon, the kind of man who never wrote books, never gave speeches, and never stood in photographs. He watched Alara move with the same quiet focus her mother had carried in the field. Not aggressive, not hesitant, just precise. After 20 minutes, Darren stepped onto the mat with her. Let's try three-point evasion. You remember the steps? She nodded once. Good. But this time, I'll be a little faster. He lunged in. Not full speed, not yet. Just enough to test her reactions. Alara slipped past him, shoulder low, and tapped his back with her palm. Good, he said. Now again. They reset. He lunged harder. Again, she glided off the line, slipping through space like she could see the strike before it happened. But this time, she didn't touch his back. She paused, hands up, checking his distance, gauging response. Darren stopped. Why'd you hesitate? You leaned into your left leg, she said. It wasn't committed. He stared at her. Not annoyed, impressed. She reads weight shifts like a sniper reads wind, Mr. Hale said from the mezzanine, barely audible. Darren turned. She ever seen combat? No, Hale said. But she's watched it. A silence settled. She was 5 when her mother died. Hale added. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just took the journal from the coffin, sat under the flag, and read every page. Darren knelt beside Alara. What was in the journal? Alara's voice was low, even. She said violence wasn't the legacy. Precision was. She wrote about restraint, about timing, about being the calm before the breach. Darren's brow furrowed. Your mom was a warrior, wasn't she? Alara looked up, eyes steady. She was peace where war happened. Outside, the rain began again, soft and rhythmic against the gym windows. Coach Darren stood and exhaled. You're not here to prove anything, are you? Alara shook her head. I'm here because I won't let her legacy be a memory that fades. People forget too fast. From above, Mr. Hale finally sat down. His voice was low. She's not here to fight. He looked at Jake Mercer's duffel bag, still forgotten, near the corner. She's here to remind people what real strength looks like. Sunday morning, the gym stayed closed, but the door was unlocked. Coach Darren stood inside, arms crossed, watching the sun creep through the high windows. The air smelled faintly of sweat and old leather. Alara was already on the mat when he arrived. No instructions, no call time. She was just there, moving through a kata sequence, each motion exact, like choreography pulled from memory. But it wasn't flashy, nothing for show. Every strike stopped 1 inch short of full extension. Every stance grounded with the kind of tension that spoke of discipline, not aggression. She moved like someone who had been told never to waste energy, not because she didn't have it, but because it meant something. Darren waited until she finished, then nodded toward the corner of the gym, where Jake Mercer's black duffel still sat untouched. He didn't come back for it. Alara followed his gaze, expression unreadable. Coach walked over, nudged the bag with his foot. You know what's funny? Jake used to laugh about that belt. Said it was his ticket to teaching overseas. Claimed he earned it by surviving 100 fights. He paused. Your mother never talked about hers. I only found out she was Valkyrie 6 after she pulled a trapped boy out of a burning Humvee alone during a hostage op carried him 2 miles through gunfire. Alara didn't react. Instead, she walked over, crouched beside the bag, and unzipped it halfway. Inside, it was what you'd expect: hand wraps, two broken mouthguards, a pair of gym sandals, and at the bottom, the belt. Folded carefully, reverently, she reached in and touched it with two fingers. Not to take it, just to feel its weight. "He's not coming back," she said softly. Darren raised a brow. "You sure?" "Yes." She zipped the bag again, slower this time. When someone's forced to see their reflection in someone smaller, younger, but sharper, it breaks the image they've built. Coach sat down on the bench beside her. "You're 10. That's a heavy insight." She didn't answer right away. Then, her journal said warriors either grow from being humbled or they disappear into excuses. Jake's already choosing which. Outside, a car engine passed. A siren in the distance echoed and faded. Coach Darren studied her a moment. "That how you see yourself? A warrior?" Alara shook her head. "I see myself as what comes after one dies." That quieted the room. Coach leaned back. Mr. Hale walked in then, carrying two small duffel bags and a folder. He placed the folder on the counter without a word. Inside, deployment papers, handwritten letters, an image of Valkyrie 6 kneeling beside a captured radio, her arm around a little girl in desert fatigues, braid whipping in the wind. Same eyes, same stillness. Darren glanced up. "She's not a prodigy, is she?" "No," Hale said, voice low. "She's a continuation." The folder sat unopened on Coach Darren's desk for hours. Not because he didn't want to know, because he already knew enough. But late that night, after Alara and Mr. Hale had gone, after the gym had gone dark and silent, Darren sat at his desk and opened it, one page at a time. The first document was a simple transfer of guardianship, signed in faded ink. The name at the top, Commander Mara Kessler, known in the field as Valkyrie 6. Beside her signature, a red thumbprint from a burn-scarred hand. The next was a sealed mission report. Redacted, lines blacked out with ink so thick the paper felt warped. Only the operation name remained. Operation Thornfire / Night Evac 03. Bagram AO, hostile perimeter breach. Casualties, 8. Survivors, 1 operative, 1 child. Below it, a single handwritten note. "Alara doesn't need to know what I did. Just teach her to breathe through the chaos." Coach sat back, eyes stinging for reasons he didn't voice. There was a photo, creased at the corners, of a woman standing in profile beside a burnt-out convoy, her hand resting protectively on the head of a tiny child with the same eyes Alara wore today. In the background, smoke. The American flag tattered and hanging low on a bent pole. Coach placed the photo down carefully, then turned to the final page. It was a journal entry. Not from Mara Kessler. From Hale. "She's not like Mara. She doesn't talk in storms. She watches. I tried to keep her away from the discipline. Locked up the mats. Hid the dog tags. Never spoke about tridents or deployments. But at 7, she broke down a door hinge to study the angle of stress. At 8, she fixed a dislocated shoulder during a school camping trip, said the teacher's weight was in the wrong place. At 9, she stopped a boy twice her size from hitting someone else, not with violence, but with posture. I asked her how she knew. She said, because when Mom stopped the fight, nobody wanted to move again." Coach closed the folder and pressed his fingers to his temple. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly. In the morning, Alara returned. She didn't say a word, just walked in, removed her shoes, bowed to the mat, and began warming up. The other kids noticed. Jake Mercer's absence was felt like a missing shadow. And in his place, whispers. Not of ridicule this time. Of curiosity. Respectful silence. Coach Darren stepped onto the mat beside her. "Today," he said, "we start from zero stance. Real form. Real principles. No flash. No shortcuts." Alara nodded. He gave her a rare smile. "Your mom would have liked that." Alara didn't look up, but she did say she hated shortcuts. Then dropped into position, every movement carved from muscle memory, not her own, but inherited. And behind the front desk, where only Darren could see, the old trident patch had been framed. Quiet, unannounced, like it had always belonged there. Wednesday brought a new energy to the gym. Word had spread, not loud, not posted, but whispered, passed between sparring partners, carried by quiet nods and lingering stares. Alara had become something different in their eyes. Not a novelty, not a punchline, a presence, but not everyone accepted it. In the corner of the gym, a tall woman laced her gloves with deliberate tension. Ava Castillo, former state Muay Thai champion, current assistant instructor, and Coach Darren's sharpest critic when it came to letting kids play warrior. She didn't dislike Alara, but she didn't believe in ghosts either. Coach watched her carefully as she approached. "You're looking tense." "She's not ready," Ava said, jerking her chin toward Alara, who was calmly balancing on one foot, hands open in breath control posture. "She's not ready," Coach replied. "I've seen 10-year-olds with talent before, Darren. It doesn't make them veterans." "She's not a veteran," he said. "She's a mirror." Ava exhaled hard. "Then let's see what she reflects." Coach said nothing. Instead, he walked onto the mat and clapped twice. The room stilled. "Alara," he called. "Up for some flow drills." She turned, nodded once. Ava stepped forward, already tapping her gloves together. "I'll go light." Coach paused. So did the gym. It wasn't meant as cruelty. Ava was disciplined. But this wasn't practice. This was measurement. Alara bowed. Ava bowed back, respectfully but tight. "Ready when you are." They squared up. First contact was minimal. Ava moved with careful rhythm, testing range, feeding predictable strikes to let Alara respond. Alara didn't bite. She didn't flinch, didn't parry early. She waited. Then, when Ava shifted her lead hip forward slightly, a mistake barely visible, Alara slipped inside the line, touched Ava's sternum with 2 fingers, and backed out again. Clean. Surgical. Ava's brows lifted. She increased pace. A front kick came in fast, but Alara didn't block it. She caught it midair and lowered Ava's leg gently, like a parent placing a child's toy back on the shelf. Gasps echoed from the wall. "She's reading me," Ava muttered. Coach Darren stepped closer. "Not reading. Tracking." Then Ava tested her with a spin elbow, too fast for a child to process. But Alara ducked, not instinctively, but by angle, like she'd calculated it in real time. She stepped back. "Breathe out once. Calm." Ava paused, sweat glistening on her brow now. She pulled off her gloves, walked over, kneeled down. "You don't need to prove anything, kid," she said quietly. "You already did." Alara looked at her, not smiling, but softening. "I wasn't proving anything," she replied. "I was listening." The gym was silent, and from the bench, Mr. Hale closed the dog tags in his palm and looked down. "Just like her mother," he whispered. Thursday was open floor, no formal class, just mats available, pads stacked in the corners, and a Bluetooth speaker that looped instrumental beats too soft to distract. Alara sat alone near the framed trident patch Coach had mounted behind the desk. She didn't stare at it the way kids stare at trophies. She stared like someone looking through a window at something she wasn't allowed to touch. Coach Darren noticed. From across the floor, he watched her eyes, still, unmoving, trained on that folded cloth like it might breathe. "She hasn't asked about it once," he told Hale, who was nursing a black coffee in the bleachers. "She won't," Hale replied. Coach raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" "Because it wasn't hers," Hale said. Coach turned to look at the patch again. "She earned respect in this gym. That's different from earning that." There was a long pause between them. Then Hale added, "Her mother said never to let her inherit symbols. Only purpose." Coach leaned against the wall. "You think she's here chasing her mother's shadow?" "No," Hale said, quiet. "She's here to make sure it never gets erased." Across the gym, a voice called out, "Hey, little sensei. You teach privates now." It was meant to be a joke. Maybe. The speaker, Curtis Dale, 19, new to the gym. Broad frame. Loud. Big on talk, light on form. Alara looked up. Didn't answer. He swaggered over. "Heard you made Jake tuck tail and leave. Thought maybe you had secrets to share." Coach Darren watched closely. Didn't step in. Curtis continued. "You a secret ninja or something?" Alara blinked once. "I listen better than most." He laughed, not kindly. "Yeah? You listen your way into black belts now." Mr. Hale stood slowly from the bleachers. Coach Darren placed a hand on his chest. Wait. Curtis clapped his hands. How about a round, huh? We go light. You teach me how to stand still and look cool. Alara stood. Still didn't speak. Didn't need to. Coach walked over. 1 minute. Light. No takedowns. Curtis nodded eagerly. Don't worry, coach. I'll be gentle. Alara bowed. Curtis barely mimicked it. The match began. Curtis bounced on his heels, hands loose. Don't blink, sensei. He threw a high jab, wild and loose. Alara didn't dodge. She stepped forward into the space and planted her foot where his center line collapsed. Curtis froze mid-punch. She didn't hit him. She didn't need to. She reached up, placed 2 fingers gently against his throat, and held them there. Soft, still, and undeniably in control. Curtis backed away, startled, hand on his neck like something had passed through him. Coach called it. That's time. Curtis tried to laugh. Okay, wow. Lucky guess. Alara turned to him. Voice low. You're too loud to hear anything. Then walked back to her spot beneath the framed patch, the one that wasn't hers. Not yet. Friday's storm rolled in early. Rain struck the roof like gravel, and thunder rattled the window panes of the gym. By noon, most classes had been canceled. But Alara still showed up. Coach Darren wasn't surprised. He just turned on the lights and unrolled the mats in silence. Mr. Hale arrived 15 minutes later. No umbrella. No umbrella needed. He took his usual place on the bleachers, his coat damp, hands clasped loosely on his lap. Watching, Alara didn't speak to him. He didn't expect her to. That was how it had always been. Instead, she walked to the center of the gym and stood with her eyes closed. No movement. No posture. Just stillness. Breathing drills today? Coach asked. She nodded. Darren stepped back, folded his arms, and watched. She began slowly, controlled inhales, exhalations through the nose. Her diaphragm rose and fell with exact timing. Between each breath, stillness again. Most kids couldn't last 30 seconds without fidgeting. Alara passed 5 minutes without moving her hands. Coach glanced at Hale. How long can she stay like that? Hale shrugged. Longest I've timed was 48 minutes. Darren let out a low whistle. That's not meditation, he said. No, Hale replied. That's preparation. Then came the noise. The front door burst open, wind howling in behind Jake Mercer. Soaked, unshaven, different. He stood at the doorway, letting the storm rage behind him for a moment before stepping in. Everyone looked up, even Alara. She didn't move. Jake took 3 slow steps toward the mat. I didn't come to win, he said. Coach Darren raised an eyebrow. Then why are you here? To apologize, Jake said. Then he turned to Alara, and to ask her a question. She opened her eyes. He walked closer, but stopped at the edge of the mat, where the lines begin, where respect starts. I saw a video, he said. Someone filmed our spar. It went around. Coach's face stiffened. Jake shook his head. It's not what people said about me that got to me. It's what they said about her. He turned to Alara again. They said she fought like someone who'd seen real war. Alara finally spoke. I haven't, but you carry it like you have. She didn't respond. Jake stepped forward and sat on the mat. Not proud, not broken, just listening. How, he asked. It wasn't sarcastic. It wasn't a challenge. It was genuine. How do you stay calm when it gets loud in here? He tapped his chest. When everything goes too fast. Alara stared at him for a long time. Then she walked forward, kneeled beside him, and placed a small, weathered item in his hand. A folded paper square. Inside it, a quote, written in faded ink. The loudest fighter dies first. Breathe through the noise. You're not here to win. You're here to end it. Jake looked up. Is that from your mother? Alara shook her head. It's from her last day. The storm raged outside. But inside, Jake just breathed. And for once, he listened. The next Monday, the gym was unusually quiet. No class. No drills. Just Alara and Coach Darren moving the benches, clearing space on the mat. She was carrying her old backpack, the one with the frayed strap and burn mark near the zipper. Most never noticed. Today, Coach did. What's that patch? He asked casually. Alara didn't answer at first. She placed her bag gently on the bench and peeled open the Velcro flap to reveal it fully. A small square, midnight blue. embroidered in gold thread. 18/Nemesis. Coach Darren stepped closer, his brows pinched. That's not a school patch. No, Alara replied. It was my mother's. He crouched beside her. Military. Alara nodded. Task force. Unofficial. No public records. Coach said nothing, but his face turned solemn. Your mom ever teach you more than just defense? He asked. Alara hesitated. Enough, she answered, but never to show off. Only to finish. Coach looked out across the mat. We teach kids to perform here, but your mom trained you to disappear. She nodded. Then, without being asked, Alara stepped barefoot onto the mat and assumed a stance Coach Darren hadn't seen before, a grounded posture, left side slightly turned, arms low, soft elbows. Not karate, not jujitsu, something else. What style is that? She called it quiet hand. Coach tilted his head. It's not in any curriculum. She invented it. She moved slowly, showing a drill. Every step flowed into the next. Shifts in balance, wrist positioning, breathing with each motion, as if the air itself were part of the form. Then she paused and pointed to the far corner. Set up the heavy bag? Coach obeyed. He dragged the 120-pound Muay Thai bag into place and anchored it. Alara stood still, focused. Then she stepped into the same flowing pattern, but this time, at the final move, she drove her palm upward into the base of the bag with a sharp exhale. The chain groaned. The bag swung wildly. Coach blinked. He'd seen full-grown men fail to move that bag half as far. That wasn't muscle, he murmured. No, Alara said. It was precision. She walked off the mat. Behind her, the bag was still swaying. Coach stared at the patch again, then muttered, almost to himself. Nemesis, goddess of retribution. Alara heard it. She turned back. My mom believed people should be held accountable, she said, especially the ones who hide behind belts and badges. Then she lifted the bag from the bench, slung it over her shoulder, and walked out the door like a soldier returning to silence. Coach Darren didn't stop her. Didn't need to. That day, he locked the gym early and began looking up Task Force 18. Late Tuesday afternoon, the gym was quiet except for the steady tick of the clock on the wall and the distant hum of traffic outside. The fading light from the west streaked across the worn mats in long, golden shafts. Coach Darren was bent over his desk, sorting through paperwork, when the door swung open with a sharp creak. A woman entered, tall, composed, dressed in a tailored navy blazer that spoke of discipline and authority. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her eyes were clear and precise, scanning the room like a hawk. Alara, who had been stretching silently by the mat, glanced toward the doorway and then quickly averted her gaze. Her expression was unreadable, calm but guarded, like a soldier listening to an approaching threat without making a sound. The woman approached the desk without hesitation. She placed a thin, embossed folder on the polished wood. The seal of the Department of Defense gleamed faintly in the last light of day. Coach Darren. Her voice was firm but respectful. That's me, Darren answered, rising from his chair with cautious curiosity. I'm Special Agent Lillian Voss, she said, extending her hand briefly before setting it down. Department of Defense. I'm here regarding Valkyrie 6. The name hit the room like a dropped stone. Darren's breath caught. He recognized the code name immediately, a legend whispered about among elite circles, a ghost who saved countless lives in the shadows. Valkyrie 6 was more than a soldier. She was a symbol. I understand you've been training her daughter, Agent Voss continued. We need to discuss certain classified operations and concerns about family security. Alara, who had been watching silently, stepped forward. Her voice was steady and low, but laced with an unmistakable steel. You're here because of my mother. Agent Voss nodded. Yes, Valkyrie's past isn't something we can leave buried. There are threats, individuals who have not forgotten. The enemies she made, they are still active. Alara's posture straightened, eyes narrowing just slightly. That's why I train. Not just to fight, but to survive. Darren motioned toward the chairs near the wall. Please sit. They gathered in the quiet corner of the gym, the shadows growing longer as the sun dipped beneath the horizon. Agent Voss opened the folder slowly, revealing photographs, mission logs, and encrypted communications, documents that told stories of covert rescues, high-risk operations, and a sacrifice that only a few understood. Alara studied the material, her face a mask of quiet determination. She didn't flinch at the photos of explosions, burned-out vehicles, or her mother's face etched with exhaustion and resolve. Agent Voss leaned in, voice dropping to a near whisper. Your mother saved lives on and off the battlefield. But her enemies, they never stopped hunting. Alara's answer was steady, unwavering. I know. That's why I'm not just here to train. I'm here to be ready. The agent's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. This isn't just about skills or strength. It's about awareness, patience, and knowing when to act and when to disappear. Alara met her eyes without hesitation. I don't plan on running. Darren watched the exchange quietly, sensing the weight behind every word. A legacy woven with courage and secrets, loss and unyielding duty. The room felt thick with memories, as if Valkyrie's presence lingered in the very walls. Outside, the fading sun painted the sky in streaks of amber and violet, casting long shadows that mirrored the past Alara carried with her. Agent Voss closed the folder and stood. We'll provide what support we can. But the path you've chosen, it will test you in ways you don't yet understand. Alara nodded once, resolute. Then I'll meet those tests. As the agent turned to leave, she paused by the door. Remember, strength is not just in your fists. It's in your mind, your discipline, your silence. The door clicked shut behind her. Alara exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment settling deep. Coach Darren placed a steady hand on her shoulder. You're not alone in this. She looked up, eyes clear. Never have been. The early morning light crept softly through the gym's tall windows, casting long shadows across the worn mats. Outside, a steady rain tapped rhythmically against the glass, blurring the world beyond into soft, watercolor strokes. Inside, the air was cool and still, charged with a quiet tension that seemed to hold its breath. Alara sat cross-legged on the mat near the window, her slender fingers gently tracing the worn pages of a small, battered journal. The leather cover, cracked and faded, smelled faintly of smoke and earth, remnants of a past she carried with both reverence and burden. The journal belonged to her mother, Valkyrie 6, a name whispered with awe and respect among those who knew the truth. Coach Darren leaned against the wall nearby, watching silently. The gym was empty now, but the presence of this girl filled the space more than any crowd ever had. Her movements were minimal. She didn't fidget or shift restlessly like most children. Instead, there was a calm certainty in her stillness, a gravity that pulled the room's focus toward her. She read aloud softly, her voice steady and clear. The fiercest warrior is not the one who shouts loudest or strikes hardest, but the one who carries peace within chaos. Darren stepped closer, settling beside her on the mat without breaking the moment's silence. She believed that strength without control is just destruction. Alara said, eyes never leaving the page. I can see you're learning more than just technique, Darren replied. That kind of wisdom, that balance, is what separates the best from the rest. Alara nodded slowly, closing the journal with care as if she feared breaking the fragile connection to the past. For a moment, they simply sat together, the only sound the rain's gentle percussion on the roof. Then, from the distant road outside, the faint but unmistakable rumble of an engine approached, growing steadily louder. Alara's eyes sharpened, the calm stillness melting into alertness. She rose smoothly to her feet. Coach Darren followed her gaze toward the door just as it opened, and Mr. Hale stepped inside. His coat was soaked from the downpour, his face weathered but resolute, carrying the weight of many silent battles. I have news, he said quietly, wiping rain from his brow. There's talk in old circles. The task force, the one your mother led, it's stirring again. Some of those ghosts we thought were gone are moving. Alara's lips pressed into a thin line. She closed the journal and tucked it carefully into her bag, the gesture slow but deliberate. Then we prepare, she said with quiet finality. Darren stood, feeling the gravity settle over them like a storm cloud. This was no longer just about training or proving skill. This was about legacy, about survival, about carrying forward a mission born in fire and silence. He glanced around the empty gym, the mats beneath their feet worn but steadfast, like the unyielding discipline they embodied. "The path ahead won't be easy," he said softly, "but you've already faced more than most will ever know." Alara met his gaze, eyes steady and unflinching. "I don't plan to falter." Outside, the rain intensified, thunder rolling across the sky like distant war drums. Inside, beneath the quiet roof of the gym, a storm was gathering, a storm of resilience, resolve, and the silent strength of a warrior who refused to be forgotten. The days grew shorter, the sunlight filtering through the gym's tall windows casting long, golden beams across the worn mats. The air buzzed with the rhythm of training, gloves hitting pads, sneakers scuffing the floor, soft grunts of effort and concentration. Yet beneath the noise, a quiet tension simmered, unseen but palpable. Alara moved through the space with a calm precision, each step deliberate, each breath measured. The other students watched her, not with the casual curiosity reserved for a newcomer, but with a dawning respect that lingered in their eyes and hushed their voices. Coach Darren observed from the sidelines, his gaze steady but thoughtful. The transformation wasn't just physical. It was the presence Alara carried, a silent command that made even the most confident fighters pause and reassess. But respect, he knew, wasn't freely given. It was earned, and sometimes it came through trials that cut deeper than bruises. One humid afternoon, as the late sun slanted low and painted the gym in a warm orange glow, a boy named Tommy approached her. Tommy was eager, brash. At 13, he carried a confidence born of youthful bravado and a fierce desire to prove himself. He challenged Alara to a sparring match, not out of cruelty, but to test the whispers he'd heard. Alara nodded once, serene and unshaken. She stepped onto the mat, the familiar weight of the moment settling over her shoulders. The gym fell into a hush. The match began. Tommy lunged forward with aggressive swings, his punches thrown hard and fast, fueled by teenage recklessness. He tried to overwhelm, to push Alara into a mistake. But she moved like water, flowing and yielding without breaking. Her body responded instinctively, a blend of inherited discipline and quiet focus. She didn't counter with force. She absorbed, deflected, and when the opening came, she reached out with gentle precision. Her fingers barely brushed Tommy's shoulder. The contact was light, an unspoken signal. The match was over. The gym remained silent for a heartbeat. Then a ripple of astonished whispers began. Tommy blinked, stunned by the grace in her restraint. His chest heaved, not from exhaustion, but from the sudden realization that he had been outmatched, not by strength, but by control. He stepped back and nodded, a newfound respect shining in his eyes. The other students exchanged glances, an unspoken acknowledgement passed between them. Alara was no longer just a quiet girl on the mats. She was a living echo of a legacy few understood. As the last rays of sunlight faded, Alara sat alone near the window, the weight of history pressing gently on her. Coach Darren approached quietly and took a seat beside her. "Not everyone will understand what you carry," he said softly, voice steady. "But those who do, they will stand with you." Alara looked up, her eyes calm but fierce, the hint of a smile touching her lips. "I'm ready," she whispered. Outside, shadows lengthened, stretching long across the gym floor, a reminder that even as darkness comes, it only makes the light stronger. The gym was quiet, bathed in the soft amber glow of the few remaining lights that hummed gently above. Outside, the city was slipping into a restless stillness, the kind of silence that seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Alara moved slowly, methodical as always, packing away her gear with practiced care. Each motion was precise, a ritual she had learned to trust. The dampness from the day clung to her jacket as she slung her worn backpack over one shoulder. The faint scent of rain drifted in through the cracked window, mixing with the faint leather smell of the mats, and the faint metallic tang of sweat on the floor. This was her sanctuary, but tonight, the familiar felt uneasy. Then, just as she was about to shut off the last light, a soft, almost hesitant knock echoed from the side door. It was barely audible, but in the silence, it cut through sharply, an unexpected sound in a place that had been empty for hours. Alara froze, her breath steady but her senses alert. No one was supposed to be here. Her hand instinctively moved to her backpack, fingers tightening around the strap. Cautiously, she approached the door and peered through the frosted glass. A figure stood just beyond, shrouded in a soaked hooded jacket, water dripping from the brim. The rain that had been falling all day blurred the streetlights into halos around the figure. Alara's voice was calm, but firm as she cracked the door open just enough to speak. "Who is it?" The figure lifted their head slowly, revealing a familiar face etched with years of quiet struggle and unwavering loyalty. "Mr. Hale, I didn't want to startle you," he said softly, voice rough with fatigue. "But we need to talk." She stepped aside without hesitation, allowing him into the warm stillness of the gym. He shook off the rain and closed the door behind him, the muffled sound of the storm outside pressing against the glass. Hale reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, plain envelope, its edges worn and creased as if it had traveled far. He handed it to Alara with a steady hand. "It came today," he said quietly, "from someone who knew your mother well." Alara's fingers trembled slightly as she took the envelope. Her breath caught, the weight of the moment sinking in. She found a quiet corner and unfolded the paper carefully, as if unwrapping a fragile secret. Inside was a photograph, yellowed with age, a younger Mara Kessler standing tall and fierce, arms crossed, eyes sharp as blades. Beside her was a man Alara didn't recognize, his expression equally serious. The back of the photo bore a single line of handwriting in neat script. "Trust no one, but trust this." Beneath the photo, taped delicately to the paper, was a small USB drive, black, unmarked, ominous in its silence. Alara's jaw clenched, her fingers closing tightly around the photograph. Her heart beat with the quiet thrum of a warning she had long anticipated. Hale's voice broke the silence again, steady but grave. "There's more out there. Shadows from the past. And someone's watching us." Outside, the rain intensified, pounding the windows like distant war drums, a reminder that the storm was not just outside, it was closing in. Alara folded the photo with care and slipped it into her bag, her gaze sharp and unwavering. "Then we prepare," she said, voice low and resolute. Hale nodded, sharing the weight of that silent vow. In the stillness of the gym, beneath the watchful eyes of faded banners and worn mats, a new chapter was beginning. A chapter written in shadows, secrets, and the quiet strength of a legacy that refused to die. The days that followed were marked by a rhythm both familiar and urgent. Early mornings spent drilling precise movements, evenings folding into long hours of silent study. Alara's world had narrowed to the essentials: discipline, focus, preparation. The soft hum of the city beyond the gym faded beneath the steady cadence of her breathing and the faint shuffle of her feet on worn mats. Coach Darren watched from the sidelines, his eyes tracing the subtle shifts in her demeanor. She was no longer just a student learning to fight. She was a sentinel, vigilant and resolute, bearing the weight of a legacy darker than most could comprehend. One evening, after the last of the students had left and the gym stood empty except for their quiet footsteps and fading echoes, Alara remained behind. The dim overhead lights cast long shadows, and the faint scent of leather and sweat lingered in the air. She settled cross-legged on the floor, her worn backpack beside her. Carefully, she pulled from her bag a small, encrypted tablet, an unassuming device provided by Mr. Hale, designed to safeguard the secrets she was now charged to carry. The screen flickered to life, revealing folders of files, some marked with official seals, others cryptic and coded. Alara's eyes scanned through the images and messages with an intensity that seemed to still time itself. Photographs of faces she didn't recognize, men and women who had worked alongside her mother in shadows. Surveillance footage capturing fleeting moments, blurred but significant. Maps marked with coordinates and notes written in shorthand only a few could decipher. Each file was a thread, and slowly, a web was forming, one that connected her past to an unseen present threat. The quiet was broken by a soft buzz from her phone resting beside her, a message from an unknown number. She hesitated only a moment before unlocking the screen. "We're closer than you think. Be ready." The words hung in the air like a shadow, a warning wrapped in cold certainty. Alara's fingers lingered on the screen, her breath steady but her mind racing. Behind her, footsteps echoed softly on the floor. Coach Darren approached, his presence steady and unintrusive. He sat beside her without a word, watching the glow of the tablet's screen illuminate her face. "The past is catching up," he said quietly, voice low but heavy with meaning. Alara met his gaze, eyes calm but fierce, filled with a resolve deeper than words. "Then we stand and face it," she replied simply. The gym, once a place of youthful energy and laughter, felt transformed, hallowed by memories and heavy with anticipation. The worn mats beneath them held the weight of battles past and those yet to come. Outside, the city lights flickered against the encroaching night, unaware of the storm gathering within these walls. But inside, amid the shadows and silence, Alara's quiet strength burned brighter than ever, a beacon of resilience and unwavering courage. She was no longer just a girl underestimated by those around her. She was the heir to a legacy of valor, ready to confront the unseen enemy looming ever closer. The night pressed heavily against the windows of the gym, the rain tapping in steady, relentless rhythm, a soundtrack of nature's own tension. Inside, the air was cool and thick with anticipation, illuminated only by the faint glow of the city lights filtering through the glass. Alara stood alone in the center of the mat, her silhouette calm and still, the weight of years of training and legacy folding into every breath she took. Coach Darren watched from the shadows, his figure a quiet sentinel on the sidelines. He knew this moment wasn't about triumph through force or the roar of an audience. No, this was something far deeper, a reclamation of honor and strength through presence and quiet control. The culmination of all that had come before, the lessons, the pain, the discipline, the resilience. The door creaked softly, and Mr. Hale entered without haste, nodding respectfully at Alara. Wordlessly, he approached and placed a small, worn dog tag into her outstretched hand. The edges were smoothed by time, and the metal carried the cold weight of history. Her fingers traced the engraving, a name, a date, a silent promise etched into steel. Her eyes closed briefly, and in that moment, the memories came flooding, a mother's voice, the unspoken burdens of sacrifice, the weight of legacy passed down like a torch in darkness. From the street outside, the faint sound of footsteps echoed, cautious and deliberate. The threat was closer than anyone expected. But Alara was no longer the shy girl who had once been underestimated and dismissed. She stepped forward, to the very edge of the mat, her stance grounded, every muscle coiled with readiness but at peace. The intruders entered quietly, faces shadowed, eyes searching, but as they crossed into the gym's muted light, something shifted. It was not fear, but recognition, a presence so commanding and resolute that words were rendered unnecessary. No fists were raised, no shouts were exchanged, only silence, thick, electric, and unbreakable. One by one, the figures hesitated, then withdrew, defeated not by violence, but by the undeniable force of a warrior's silent will. The night's storm began to subside, the rain softening to a gentle drizzle as dawn painted pale light across the sky. Alara remained on the mat, standing tall and unwavering, the first soft rays outlining her figure like a halo. Coach Darren rose and approached, the rarest of smiles touching his lips, one of respect, pride, and quiet awe. "You did more than defend yourself," he said softly, voice thick with meaning. "You reminded everyone what true strength looks like." Alara's lips curved in a faint, knowing smile. No words were needed, her presence said it all. Some victories are silent, fought in shadows and solitude. But their echoes last forever, carried in the stillness where courage and honor dwell. And in that moment, the shy little girl who had once been challenged as a joke stood as a testament, not just to her own power, but to the legacy she carried, the legacy she would pass on in time. The gym grew still once more, a sanctuary where strength was not loud, but eternal. Thank you for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share your thoughts below. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Stay tuned for more immersive tactical stories.